Hey there, AJ Beaber here. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's Thursday Night Thought. Tonight we're going to talk about freedom and failure and how those two things are connected. Very powerful message, and I want to share with you the words because the message was really about this new sense of freedom that wants to arise in our lives. So the message is this: whenever the world you believe in has shattered its dreams and their meaning, a new sense of freedom begins to arise. His love awakens inside you, and interpretations no longer trap or confine you, for only facts can be justified. Isn't that a beautiful message? We can all put it up on our mirror and gain lots of inspiration from it, but the reason I share these messages on Thursday nights and do these videos is because I believe that it's not just an inspirational quote, that it's meant to apply to our lives. So how does a new sense of freedom begin to arise? How can we use failure, or these dreams that we've believed in that have shattered their dreams and their meaning? How can we do that? And so I asked, and just this story came to me around my own life back in 2006 when I had this dream of getting pregnant. And I couldn't get pregnant. I ended up having an ectopic pregnancy and miscarriages, and it was a really painful time in my life because the dreams that I believe in were shattered, and I felt like a failure, and I felt like the experience was a failure. And so I was drawn back to my journal in 2006 and where it is that I actually was experiencing this exact message of how it is that deemed failure became my freedom. And so I'm going to share with you from my 2006 journal and the experience. And I don't know if I think I was reading a book at the time, and I was just journaling. I was trying to get past this really dark time in my life, because we all as humans have been through this experience where something that we believe in has shattered, a dream, a goal, a vision, anything. This will apply to anything in life, any loss or what we deem as a loss. And then how do we get to the other side of freedom? So I'm going to share with you what's out of my journal. Risk implies failure. When we strive towards success, we risk failure. So is the answer not to strive? No. All of us have failed and should examine what failure means. Those of us in the midst of success, haunted by failure, should get to know the intimate enemy. Failure means some loss, but it can also often mean a gain, wisdom. Failure is a judgment about events. The problem stems from the judgment or the perceived loss. Because if there was no perceived loss, then we do not experience the event as a failure. Failure has two meanings. One, a shorthand term for events such as a loss of a job, a loved one, divorce, etc. And as a second, which is in a sense of judgment that you make about yourself, so that failure may also mean not living up to your own expectations. And in this, the first kind of failure is often visible. However, the second kind of failure is invisible, and it's a hidden failure. And it involves an inner dialogue about your own deep self-disappointment. And though no one on the outside world may ever know, you yourself tell yourself, believe yourself to be a failure. And this is exactly where I was at. It's important to understand what failure is and what failure isn't. Success and failure are not polar opposites. They are part of a continuum, and one can lead to the other with great ease. Neither is likely to be permanent. The irony is we believe that both will last forever. In the end, it's the real strength that comes from knowing that we can survive. It's the way we cope with failure that shapes us, not the failure itself. So if failure is a judgment about an event, and this is the part that brings in the message this week, an event is a fact. I could not argue with the fact that I could not get pregnant, that I had an ectopic pregnancy. Where all the pain was coming from was all around the meaning and the interpretation that I kept giving it. And so this is what came through. It's a word, failure is a word to define a stage. It's not a condemnation of character. It's not a permanent condition. It's not a fatal flaw. And it's not a contagious social disease. It's a judgment about an event. And so because it's a judgment, what in this discovery and coming through all of these different things, I want to skip right to the part where it leads to the freedom. So really what it is when we recognize that it's a judgment about a fact, about an event that can be justified, then we're dealing with the meaning or the interpretation. And so now we're free to reinvent ourselves, right? We can, number one, analyze what went wrong in order not to repeat the same mistake. We can reinterpret our own story. We can relabel ourselves, and we can expand our options. Those are the 4 things that came in. Because if failure is a judgment, then you are the judge, and you also have the power to alter your own judgment. And this is the beauty around it. And this is in other words, if your label is no longer appropriate, the defeat, the failure itself, can give you a chance to shed it and put on a new one. By changing your language, you are also changing your self-perception. And by changing your self-perception, you inevitably change your behavior. So at this point in my life, what I began to do is I began to journal about these experiences I was having internally, and realizing that I was the judge, that I could also rejudge it. And I just kept coming back to this place of love, self-acceptance, right? That's what it all comes down to. But more than that, it was how was I going to apply it? I needed to come up with something that really meant something to me to recreate that. And so this is what I wrote down. And I want to share it with you because I think it's powerful words about our own interpretation. And then maybe this will inspire you to write a letter to yourself. Maybe this will inspire you to write a letter about that failure or that judgment or that perceived failure internally. It's all connected, right? And this is what I wrote. It's not just about the things that I did or didn't do, although those things mattered. It's not about always doing things the right way, and it's certainly not about doing things the way that others tell me I should. It's about how I love myself and treat myself, and how I respond to myself, how I talk to myself about the things that I do, about my life experiences, who I am, and where I've been. It's about giving myself that feeling of gentle, loving self-acceptance, the one that I've been longing for so long. I had handed my esteem over to those who weren't able to love me, either because it wasn't their destiny or their desire. Here, take it, I said. You must be right. There is something wrong with me. But I had never learned the rules for how to be loved. I had given away my power to love, to be loved, and most of all, love myself. I gave away those pieces of my heart and soul to those who betrayed me, had given so much and gotten so little in return. It was time to get those pieces back. Time to love myself. Isn't that powerful? That's really what it boils down to, is the freedom of giving ourselves the freedom to love ourselves again and to redefine, relabel our experiences. And that's what this week's message is bringing in. And maybe this will encourage you to do some of that deep work as well. And I know that there were some things given in this journal that will help start that process. So may that encourage and inspire you. And I look forward to sharing our next Thursday Night Thought together.